Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Just like 2 years back, I stood here when we released our first Hindu human rights report. While I'm happy to present second Hindu human rights report, the documenting and the findings of the report itself is not very happy. It's in fact very depressing and very alarming. And very alarming. But this is a very important thing because without documentation, then we have already lost the war. And there is a civilization war, and I'm sure most of you, even those who refuse to see or acknowledge before are slowly waking up to it. The current increase of low key violence against the Hindu community, the destruction of temples, love jihad, rape jihad, these are escalating. So in this context, we have brought this report. We have documented incidents, reported incidents, which is perhaps very small chunk of the actual incidents for year 2017 and 2018. So this is basically a report of 2 years and not just a 1 year, which is usually the case. So worldwide, you can see lot of reports, human rights reports are being brought out by international agencies. And but you see one lacuna when they come to India. It is their assumption that it is only the majority or the so-called majority, numerical majority, which oppresses the numerical minority. And being blinded perhaps by this assumption or maybe some other motivations, when they come to India, they are completely ignore the atrocities against the Hindu community or against the diverse community that go under the banner of Hinduism, just because they are considered as the majority. So India is a unique case where the majority is the victim and the other, the non-majority, they are not actually minority, they are the non-majority at best, you can say. So they are the perpetrators. So the current HR reports hardly focuses on non-Hindus as a perpetrators and the Hindus as the victims. But they don't do this in other places. For example, US hate crimes tracks crimes against whites. US hate crimes tracks crimes against Christians. But in India, that is not the case. In our report, last report also focused extensively on the persecution of Hindus. But in this this year's report, we have expanded our scope. And now we have included a detailed coverage of a central government schemes which are discriminative against Hindus, state government schemes which are discriminative against Hindu, which exclude the Hindu community from various of its schemes and various things that are made to uplift the needy of the communities, and constitutional and judicial discrimination. And this is of course very important: political violence against Hindus, violence by those belonging to Islamic community against where the victims are Hindus, many of them belonging to SC, ST and other poor and other communities, temple confiscation, temple destruction, the Dravidian extremism in the extreme south of India. If I have to summarize whatever we have documented in a single table, it is this. For the last 2 years, at least 100 instances of love jihad, rape jihad, violence against women have been documented. These are all incidences which have been reported in mainstream media. They mostly never occupy the center page, never occupy the front page, but they have been reported nevertheless, and these are documented from there. Just imagine how many more is on the ground which are not reported. 32 instances of Islamic attacks and communal clashes instigated by members of Muslim community. 25 instances of attack on Hindu festivals and places of worship. I am sure a lot of you have heard of how Durga festivals, Durga processions were specifically attacked in West Bengal. Just an example. 40 political violence and killing of Hindus. These are all violence against and the killing or murder of political activists who identify with some form of Hindutva or some form of Hindu ideology. And then there are 32 cases of religious persecution and 25 cases of Dalit persecution by Muslims. While the media is very prompt in reporting wherever the Dalits are the victims, but they except on one area where the perpetrator belongs to the Muslim community. This is an unfortunate fact, and for the sake of truth, hopefully things will change. So central government, there are constitutional discrimination. See, most of the discrimination, it's not just happening on the ground or some media or some community. It's not just that. There is a discrimination embedded within our constitution. The Article 26 to 30 is completely puts the Hindu community under disadvantage. There are lots of Hindu excluding schemes. Around 17,232 crores of for non-Hindu schemes in 2012 to 17. Annual tax of rupees 2,757 rupees per taxpayer. That is, if you just consider the crores of rupees spent on schemes which exclude Hindus, then if you see it there, then we are paying as a taxpayers, we are paying 2,700 rupees per year. So we are paying a kind of a jizya 2.0, I would say. This is a new form of jizya. Terrorism, everybody knows, but maybe you may not have realized the huge magnitude. 100,000 people, 100,000 deaths related to terrorism in last 35 years. And 99.87% are due to the perpetrators belongs to non-Hindu community, non-Hindu ideology. And yet, our country have seen this false narrative of Hindu terror. From terror has no religion to Hindu terror, this transition did not take much time. Fortunately, we know that this is a false narrative today. Hindu temple control. In Tamil Nadu alone, the government controls 36,425 temples, 56 matas, 1,721 specific endowments and 189 trusts. Just imagine the width and the depth of the temple control. And this control happens only against Hindu temples, Hindu places of worship and Jains. We all know the churches, the mosques, they are not controlled. Moreover, the governments give the taxpayers' money as endowment, as for supporting the building of and expansion of churches, samudaya bhavans, and all these things. I want to add one more point, that is the judicial direct intervention of the judiciary. We all know the famous case of Sabarimala, how the judiciary took upon itself to dismantle Hindu practice, dismantle an age-old practice which is observed by millions of men and women. But that was not the only case. In the last 2 years, we have seen many cases like restriction in case of Dahi Handi festival, the court judgment regarding the Diwali cracker ban. There was no, the crackers don't pollute when they are exploded on a New Year or a Christmas or some celebrities' weddings, but only the Diwali crackers somehow pollute the air and makes the Delhi people, prevents them from breathing properly. There are others like Jallikattu ban, but these are all the major cases. But there are others, many more kind of interventions that are happening at state levels that we may not know so easily. So with this, with this short introduction, I invite Sankrant Sanu to continue the presentation.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namaskar, welcome. So Nitin has done a fabulous introduction. I just wanted to add 1 or 2 points on the introduction and then we'll dive into it. And one of the the key points is why did we need to create this report in the first place? Nitin touched on it, saying that there is the precedent internationally is that whoever's human rights are being violated, they are covered in human rights reports. But in India, it's a strange thing that if you are a Hindu, then you are considered either you're not human or you don't have rights, because you're not considered to be categorized in the human rights category. So we are trying to document something that is not being ordinarily compiled and documented. And the other reason for this is not only are the atrocities against Hindus not being documented, but a false and one-sided narrative is created, which is, recently we saw some signature campaign happen and other things happen. So there's a false narrative that is created, which is actually flipping it around, which is saying Hindus are the aggressors and they're oppressing minorities, they're oppressing Dalits, and this narrative is being spread internationally without any counterpoint to it. So there's really nobody who's saying, well, some of that might be true. There might be cases where Dalits are being oppressed by Hindus. There might be cases where a Muslim has been victimized and attacked by a Hindu, and those are legitimate cases, and we do need to pay attention to it. But there is also the other side, and this other side is being missed, and it's very important for balance to cover this. Ideally, we wouldn't need to have a Hindu human rights report specifically saying Hindu human rights. It should just be a human rights report. But we are taking up this issue because it is left out. It is not being covered. So I'll then specifically come into this notion of discriminatory schemes. The discrimination, a lot of times we are talking about, some community which is attacking Hindus and so on and so forth. But really, I would hold that the government itself is the biggest culprit. The state and the central governments are the biggest discriminators against Hindus. And ironically, this is done in the name of secularism. So secularism anywhere in the world means that the state is not going to interfere in religious activity. Secularism anywhere in the world means the state will not look at the religious identity of a citizen in deciding laws or in deciding how the government treats a citizen. In India, secularism is actually the exact opposite. So this so-called word communalism is actually what should be the name for what is called Indian secularism. So Indian secularism is about blatant discrimination based on religious identity, and that is called secular. Just to give you an idea, also the other argument that is used is because minorities are being taken care of, therefore these discriminatory schemes are needed. Firstly, again, like for instance in the United States, you cannot even ask the religion of a citizen in the census, which is the state absolutely has nothing to do with the religion of a citizen. So to say, and there's just the idea that there would be a Muslim scholarship scheme or a Hindu scholarship scheme because a Hindu is a minority would be completely absurd and unconstitutional, because the US is a secular state. In India, it's the other way around. Firstly, there are special schemes for so-called minorities. Secondly, these schemes exclude places where Hindus are a minority. So there are actually 8 states where Hindus are a minority, but there are no schemes for when Hindus are a minority. So the correct wording for these schemes, and the wording we use in the report, and I urge all of you to use this wording, is the minority word is a misnomer. We call them non-Hindu schemes or Hindu excluding schemes. Because even when Hindus are a minority in a certain state, again, it would be not the Hindus, but the non-Hindus who would get benefit from the scheme, even in states where Hindus are a minority. So we are Hindu exclusion schemes, and these start from the central government. And some of them were started in the last 5 years by the current BJP government. So it is a non-partisan discrimination. It is done by every party that is in power. So electing the current dispensation doesn't seem to have made any difference. In fact, the amount and number of Hindu discriminatory schemes has expanded in scope considerably over the last 5 years. So there are scholarship schemes, Nai Manzil, this can be gone looked at. Maulana Azad National Fellowship Scheme, again only for so-called minorities. Padho Pardesh. So there's actually a scheme in which you get scholarship or you get interest-free loans or grants to study abroad. Again, this is only for non-Hindus. In fact, I got an email from a girl. She identified herself as a Brahmin, saying she has, I think it was University of Pennsylvania. She'd gotten a computer science PhD admission, and she was asking if I could help because she didn't have the resources. The government would help her if she converted to Islam. This is a Sharia government, but it wouldn't help her if she remains a Hindu. And I asked her if I can put her name out for crowdsourcing so we could do it, but she was too proud to put her name out. She's like, I don't want to be crowdsourced. I don't want to feel like I'm getting a charity case. So this is, but this is a reality. This is the reality that the government is not going to help you if you belong to one community, but it has got special schemes if you belong to another community. And these schemes extend across the board. There are coaching schemes, there are skill development schemes, there's this Ustad scheme. So if you're a Hindu weaver from Banaras, you are not going to get this government help. If you're a Muslim weaver who's a neighbor, then the government is going to help you. Again, I do not see any logic or so-called secularism or any of this that would discriminate blatantly on citizens based on their religious identity, and that would be called secular, and it would be supported by the so-called liberal policy. So a whole bunch of these schemes, the report documents all of these, and one thing we've done this year is the report is now free download report. I'm going to share the link with you at the end. So it's a free download report. We wanted to spread as much as possible, and we are starting to document all this discrimination. Nayi Udaan scheme, specifically the government is doing coaching for UPSC for non-Hindus. Again, it's very expensive. I'm sure Hindu students would also love to get help for coaching, but this is not available if you're a Hindu. Similarly, there are a number of women's schemes. There's the Nai Roshni scheme. There's the Begum Hazrat Mahal National Scholarship Scheme. Again, so schemes are available for non-Hindus. There are even schemes for marriage. You get a grant. If you're divorced, there is help for you. You get a grant. But all of these grants are only available if you're not cursed to be Hindu in the state of India. So there was a lot of noise recently because the minority ministry announced 5 crore scholarships, and people said, no, it's unrealistic, they're not going to do it. Our data shows that during the last 3 years alone, about 2.5 crore scholarships, Hindu excluding scholarships, have been distributed by the central government. And this excludes all of the schemes that are there at the state level, at the state government level, and I'm going to go through some of them as well. So all of these schemes that the states do is in addition to everything that the center is doing. And so in Bihar, for instance, there's interest-free loans to Muslims. If you're not a Hindu, you can get microfinance. If you are a divorced woman and you're not a Hindu, you can get aid. And it goes on and on. Again, I'm just listing a very small sample here. We have a list, and even the list that we have and all the incident reports that we have are only a small fraction. So hopefully we can get more crowdsourcing and more people contributing to it. And this report has really been driven by 2 or 3 people just, getting together and driving the vision and driving the documentation of this. I mean, Karnataka is again over the top in this. There are a few states that have just really, really over the top. Again, this is bipartisan. It doesn't matter which government comes. There's actually Christian development programs. It's very strange. I mean, in the US, you couldn't have a Christian development program or a Hindu development program. They would be both illegal. But in India, there's no Hindu development program, but there's Christian development program by the state. It funds churches. I mean, we talk about, okay, all this funding is coming from abroad for funding missionary activity. The state of India is the biggest proselytizer. The state of India is saying, if you convert, I'll give you a scholarship out of Hinduism. The state of India is saying, if you're a Christian, I'm going to help build your church. This is what the state of India is doing. I mean, it's a complete absurdity, especially if you look at it in the context that in India, both Christians and Muslims have been rulers in the past. So in 47 actually was the time that India got independence, but it continues what I called a religious apartheid state. It's like saying in South Africa, because whites are a minority, they should get special privileges. right? So privileges for so-called minorities who were rulers in India is as absurd as saying there need to be special privileges for whites because they are a minority in South Africa, right? Of course, once apartheid was dismantled, then those privileges made no sense, but India continues a religious apartheid state in the name of minorities. So Christian Development Program, there's a land purchase scheme. So you will get free agricultural land. There's a corporation that purchases land and gives it to you if you are not a Hindu. This is happening. There's a Bidai scheme. So if you are a non-Hindu woman, you will get a grant for your wedding. You will get help if you get divorced. You'll get financial help from the state. Of course, you can't be a Hindu to get all this. There's Ganga. There's Ganga Kalyan scheme, which is it is an irrigation scheme, ironically named after the Ganga. But this irrigation help is only available to farmers who are not Hindu in the state of Karnataka. And again, it's just, when you go through the list, just mind-boggling. And it's mind-boggling that nobody has raised an objection to this. People have assumed this is normal, this is okay to happen. It's okay for the state to say, come in to the office, what is your religion? Based on your religion, we'll tell you what the state will offer you. That we consider okay. And why are so-called liberals not aghast at this? I mean, the whole point of a secular state is the state has nothing to do with the religion of the citizen. It goes against the equality clause. But the constitution has been interpreted in this way, and things have been done so that complete inequality can be justified. In Kerala, frankly, there are schemes which are too many to list, so I couldn't even start to list them. So you can go and look at all of them. Again, mind-boggling. I'll also mention just one, which is already the central government has a UPSC coaching scheme, and the state government also has a civil services fee reimbursement. So if you have to take coaching for that, you'll get free reimbursement. Again, only if you're not a Hindu. Only then you'll get this. The economic condition of Hindus in Kerala is not higher than that of Muslims or Christians. But so it is not based on poverty. It is not based on any other criteria other than you cannot be a Hindu. Similarly, Telangana, it actually pays for a Christmas feast. It distributes things to people on Christmas, on Dawat-e-Iftar. It also has a Christian Minority Finance Corporation. Again, these are all state-run corporations that are run on a religious basis. The other thing which is really destructive about these schemes, and I really want to point this out, because there's a lot of misunderstanding when I start to talk about it. In fact, somebody who I thought was a good friend on Twitter said, oh, you're tweeting all this hateful stuff on Twitter. And I was like, why is asking for equal rights hate? Can somebody explain what makes it hateful? In fact, these schemes are hateful, and I'll tell you exactly why. On the one hand, you could say, well, quote, minorities should be supported, and again, as I've showed, that notion doesn't make sense. But even worse, see, India has a very syncretic religious experience. Like growing up, I went to the Gurdwara more often than I went to the temple. I grew up in Chandigarh. Every Christmas I would go, and it was a part of our ritual that we would go to church with our Christian friends. This was part of my experience of growing up in India. So many people have a multi-religious experience. So what happens is, when the state says narrowly you must identify your religion, suddenly that multi-religious experience is actually attacked. So now I must declare that I am a Muslim, or I must declare that I am a Christian. I might be a Christian who's very open, who celebrates Hindu festivals, but I must, for the state, now declare I'm a Christian. How will I prove I'm a Christian? My name could look like a Hindu. How would I prove? So now the Telangana says you get a certificate from the pastor. Okay, what does that mean? Suddenly you've put church in control of people's lives. Now I must start attending church, because why will the pastor give me a certificate unless I attend church? So what these schemes does is, it communalizes the entire Indian experience and Indian polity. So it is not just saying, a lot of people criticize me on Twitter when I raise this, saying, no, why should we not help Muslim girls? It's good that government is doing it. It's awesome that we are helping Muslim girls, but why do we leave out Hindu girls? Why make a category saying Muslim girls who are poor will be helped, but Hindu girls who are maybe even poorer won't be helped? Why do we need to divide up people like that? Why can't we say anybody who's below this poverty line and who's a girl can be helped? There is no reason to do that. So when you are categorizing people by religion, you are actually attacking the syncretic pluralism of India. You are actually attacking the fact that for us, it's very interesting. If you go to Japan and you ask people their religion, you will find a lot of people say we are Shinto, a lot of people also say we are Buddhist, right? So a lot of people, in fact 70% of people identify as multi-religious. What would happen if our census says you can identify yourself as belonging to more than one religion? The very fact you can belong to one religion is an Abrahamic idea, is an exclusive, conclusive religious idea which does not take place in India, right? So as soon as the state says, even if you're giving 1 rupee, as soon as the state say, I will give you 1 rupee because you are a Muslim, you have communalized the state. As soon as the state says, I'm going to give you 1 rupee because you're a Christian, now you have to prove you're a Christian, now you have to prove that you have to get a certificate from a pastor or this or that. You've suddenly communalized the entire system in which this is happening. So this is the reason why it is way more destructive than just the fact that you're giving some money. It goes against the Indian ethos completely. Uttar Pradesh has a lot of schemes, again too many to list at this point. West Bengal has a number of schemes. Again, West Bengal, there are districts in which Hindus are minority, but microfinance, for instance, special schemes for microfinance will only be available to non-Hindus. Even if where the Hindus are a minority in the district, those schemes will not be available to non-Hindus. It's almost like a curse. You're cursed if you're a Hindu in India. This is what the situation is from the government. We'll go on to incident reports. Again, we have a lot of details on this, but we have documented about 100 cases of communal violence against Hindu women. And it's very important to realize, how do we distinguish this violence from, let us say, why are we classifying this as a hate crime or a religiously motivated crime versus another rape that happens? There might be many rape incidents. What is very specific about the kind of crimes we list here is that lot of times there will be a rape and then there will be a call for conversion with the rape, right? So there will be a rape and there will be a marriage with forced conversion attached to it, and then there will be atrocities if that conversion does not happen. So religion becomes a factor when you're saying, I'm going to rape and abuse you and I want you to convert, right? I mean, there can be a rapist on the street there is just a sex crime and there is no religious involvement in it, right? And this is how typically would happen. There's a criminal and that criminal element does a rape, but that criminal is not going to be motivated by a religious motivation, not saying that I'm doing some religious duty by doing this rape because I'm going to convert somebody, or my religion tells me that it is okay to do it because this person doesn't belong to my religion and therefore it is moral to rape. So this is where it becomes a problem. This is where we've highlighted these crimes are inter-religious rape which have a component of religion attached to it. Again, I've just taken one incident, Chaynika Kumari. We hear so many names. We have names that are repeated almost on loop. If you have a victim from a particular community, that name is drummed into your heads. You can probably tell me 3 names of victims from particular community if they get killed, and even if incident happened 8 years ago, you still remember the name. But these other incidents where Hindus are the victim, the names will be erased. You won't know any of these names in the reports we put because the 100,000 articles have not been written about what has happened. In fact, a lot of these, just one newspaper will cover it obscurely, and then we have to dig out the report and do it, and it won't be covered broadly. So Chaynika Kumari, murdered by Mirza Haq. He's a doctor. Again, a lot of people make arguments that, some community needs to be educated because after that they will be brought out of religious fundamentalism. This is absolutely false. There is no evidence for this. There is no evidence for this that terrorism decreases due to education. Pretty much all of the terrorists, including 9/11, were all educated. The Sri Lanka attack were all educated. The Bangladesh cafe attack, they all came from educated, affluent families, right? So there is no correlation between lack of education and terrorism, but people keep giving these stupid arguments over and over again. No, government is doing this to counter terrorism. Where is the evidence? There's no evidence. And if poverty is an issue, then help all the poor people. Why should you help only particular kinds of... And again, the motivation for the murder was she refused to convert to Islam and marry. Body was stuffed into a suitcase and left in a railway station. Again, we've documented 100 incidents that are along these lines, that are interreligious violence against Hindu women. We've documented attacks on Hindu festival and places of worship. This is again an egregious one where, in Hindu Amarnath pilgrims were shot, dead. But low level of violence is happening across the country. Sometimes there will be desecration of the murti. Sometimes a lot of murti theft has happened. Huge amount of murti theft and desecration has happened. Lot of times stone pelting will happen. We saw a recent incident in Delhi where a mob came and ransacked a temple. But because it was in Delhi, it became news. But that kind of incident is happening all over India. And again, it's not even documented. There was one stone thrown at a church and it became national news. Later on, it found there was some disgruntled Christian only had thrown that church. But it became national news, a national daily in India, Christians under siege. This was a 24-point headline or whatever headline in the national newspaper because one church was somebody threw a stone at the church. All of these other incidents where, in fact, even in Delhi, the data is that far more Hindu temples are desecrated than of any other place of worship. Nobody talks about it. So this is the kind of bias that the Hindu Human Rights Report wants to counter. Again, cases of political violence. This is happening in West Bengal, it's happening in Kerala, it's happening in Karnataka. In fact, if I remember, one of the actions of the Karnataka government when it came in was to free a number of PFI activists who were involved in political violence in the Hindus. And the first thing that the so-called secular Congress government does is to free these people. And the first thing that the BJP government does is give them scholarships. So in either case, it is pretty clear who has to be appeased or made special. So the lot of cases of political violence, lot of this is left-wing violence. So we have to realize the other thing which is very strange is, people talk about 70 or 79%, 80% of India being Hindu. Of course, in no other country would anti-Hindu, like in the US, you wouldn't classify anti-Hindu, anti-Christian atheists as Christian, right? But in India, because of the way the classification goes, this 79% includes people who are radically opposed to Hinduism, people who would attack Hindu places of worship, people who would attack festivals are also counted in the 79% quote Hindu. A lot of them can be a left-wing communist, completely anti-Hindu, more opposed to Hinduism than anybody else, but the way the classification. So if you take practicing Hindus, it will be a very small, very, very small fraction. What we really need to do is we really need to start documentation. It's very important that we start documenting it. And the problems come straight from the Constitution. The Constitution has created clauses which the Constitution makers might not even have intended to create unequal rights. The Constitution makers were more perhaps interested in, because there was a lot of discourse about minority rights, the partition had happened. They were saying minorities will also have the right to run educational institutions. It became interpreted as minorities are the only ones that would have a right to run educational institutions without interference. So it kept getting interpreted in a way that only minorities have the right, like in the RTE you've got hundreds and thousands of schools that have converted to be minority held. In fact, Hindus are selling their schools because they can't run it because of the draconian provisions of the RTE. As soon as a Christian runs it or a Muslim runs it, then the RTE provisions don't apply to you. Again, it's very, very strange. I mean, if you look at the whole way the state operates, it's completely absurd. It would make no sense. And it doesn't happen in any other country of the world, actually. So it's almost like a minority Sharia apartheid state, This is how India is being run today, and we consider it, and people call this secular. So I really urge you to also read the Hindu Charter Petition. The Hindu Human Rights Report recommends the Hindu Charter Petition as one of the solutions to this problem. We must go back to constitutional equality, which was the original dream, and take away all of this discrimination. There's a lot of poor people in India. They belong to all communities. We absolutely want to help the people who need help, but it should not be done on a religious basis, which divides people, which creates communal tension, that makes people stick to religious identities and makes that religious identity very important for a person. I mean, I might not even be a practicing Muslim, I might even be an ex-Muslim, but suddenly my children are going to get a scholarship because if I say I'm Muslim, now I am kind of forced to call myself a Muslim just to get that scholarship, right? So it's a very communal, divisive program. It's not just about helping a community. And also you can mark incidents in social media with Hindu human rights, so we can use it in a subsequent report. Again, the incidents we've covered are probably not even a tenth of the actual incidents, especially about violence against women, because a lot of them don't get reported, or they get reported to the police but never picked up by the press, and a lot of time the victims are also very afraid to come. So the report is available. It's a free download. indiafacts.org, HHRR, Hindu Human Rights Report 2019, very easy to remember URL. Make sure that you spread the word, have as many people as possible, and we must put pressure on the government and decision makers to stop this religion-based divisive policies. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Two of us are here, but one of the main people who contributed to collecting the data on this report is Subhadeep Mukhopadhyay. So Subhadeep is not here with us today, but he did a lot of the actual heavy lifting to gather, to go into all the different governments and figure out the schemes and collect the incidents. So big shout out to Subhadeep.
Sir, a small question. What I heard recently is that we have a challenge in educating our culture related books in the schools. Because the Ramakrishna mission was under problem. So I wanted to know about you. And second thing is, Twitter handle is outside, and sometimes account is blocked also, which I heard. If you write any fact based story, or Facebook or Twitter account, sometime it is blocked or something, it is a challenge.
Okay, let me, just for sake of time, I'll go forward. So how many people know Ramakrishna Mission actually sued to be classified as non-Hindu? How many people know this? Okay. In the state of West Bengal, they had a lawsuit because they wanted to be classified non-Hindu so that they could run their institutions without interference from the state. Again, this is a serious irony. Everywhere in the world, minorities strive to get the same right as the majority. In India, the majority begs to get the same right as a minority. This is the situation. So yes, if you are a Hindu aided school, you cannot teach the Gita, you cannot teach the Mahabharata, you cannot, because all of these are communal, but the same government will give grants to a Muslim school and a Christian school who can teach whatever they want, including the Bible. There is no restriction. They can have Bible prayers, you can have land grants from the Indian government, and you can teach all religions except for Hindu traditions, which actually belong to this soil. Yeah.
Actually, earlier you said that there was a clash of civilizations. Actually, we have been living through clashes of civilizations. 1857 was also a clash of civilizations. So I just want to say how to get out of this.
See,
this attack on Hindu identity.
So the clash of civilization has been going on for 1,000 years now. So just to be quick, I have written a piece called Agenda for Hindu Survival, What We Can Do as Individuals. It's on India Facts website. Please check it out. I have listed certain ideas that we individuals can do at our level. I mean, to be waiting for what government can do or not do, that's something we don't have time for. So I have just listed certain ideas what you and me can do. Thank you.
This is really important point that Nitin is making. I do urge you to read his piece also. But first thing, family is very, very important. What sanskar are we passing on to the children? You know, if the government is not teaching the Gita, are you teaching Gita at home? Right? So first we have to take responsibility for what is happening in our own families, and that tradition has to be made relevant for children. My children grew up in the US, and I've been having this continuous dialogue with my daughter, for instance. What is the relevance what is the relevance of these teachings? And these teachings are extremely relevant for modern life. So we have to really look at that. And of course, the yoga movement is affecting people worldwide. I'm part of the Art of Living. I teach the course, and I can see the transformation that comes from their worldwide transformation. So we have to keep on nurturing the tradition in all these different ways. Of course, we have to pressure the government also, because India, you cannot have an anti-Hindu government ruling India, which is all true for all governments. It's not, isn't dependent on the party. The state structure itself is like that. So if the state is in opposition to the civilization, the clash of civilization begins right there. The state is anti-civilization. The Indian state is against the Indian civilization. This cannot work. Either the state will collapse or the civilization will collapse. So we really need to address that question.
What do you see the role of big corporations? Because for any Hindu revival, or there'll be some disturbance, so which is not good for economy or big corporation. So do you see them forcing governments to not take any?
No, there's nothing.
Big corporations as in big ones.
Yeah, there's nothing like that actually. The corporations work in every. I mean, China is. I'm just taking from. I'm not holding China as an example, but China is literally imprisoning hundreds of thousands, lakhs of Muslims. It doesn't matter. I mean, the corporations its economy is 10 times as big as India. The corporations are merely doing its business. So in some senses, the corporation couldn't care less. But I'm not advocating the China model. What I'm saying is, what we are asking for is equality, right? We're not talking about anything else. All we're saying is that the state should not discriminate on a religious basis. There will be no corporation that's going to come and oppose that. All these ideas, these are fantasies of our mind, that economically there's going to be some backlash, you have to do this appeasement, otherwise Muslim countries would be unhappy. There's not a single Muslim country that's criticized China, right? But we have these fantasies and we keep pushing these fantasies. These fantasies are excuses. They're excuses to not do the right thing. And the right thing is that the government must treat all citizens equally. Yeah.
Why? I mean, they are doing all the things. I mean, to create just a vote bank or any other reason?
Well, I mean, I think it's partly it is the momentum of what happened from 1947. There was a communal award by the British that was this. In British rule, there was a proposal to divide up the electorate, and they were, into Muslims will elect Muslims and Hindus will elect. A lot of opposition from the Congress came, and then finally a series of incidents happened that precipitated in the partition in 1947. After the partition, Indian government was at pains to show that the minority will not be oppressed, right? So in some sense, trying to prove themselves, they started bending over backwards. This is where the constitutional provisions came in, and successive governments kept on building on that. So it's like mithya, right? This we've created, and the government that we expected would fix it hasn't fixed it either, because they don't want to be called communal. They don't want to be attacked. So there's a whole false narrative that has been created, and you can just keep building on that.
There's a related point to the Hindu Charter,
Sure.
which is this is mandated by the Constitution. In Articles 25 to 30, all the discrimination against the Hindus and the civilization is written into the Constitution. So if you read the Hindu Charter report, you will probably.
Yeah, because in any other case, you'd be able to just sue the state and say this is unequal, and you'd be able to win. But because of the clauses 26 to 30, you get into the state where Hindus can't control their temples, they can't run their educational issues. All these things have crept in, and that really has to be amended. Yeah, there was one question here.
Looking out for the causality of such a grand design of distortion. So one is the constitutional things, right? The way constitution is written and the way it is interpreted. But in this case of interpretation, a lot of role comes from the way polity has been practiced in India, especially by the Congress pre-independence, right? And in that era, the overarching influence is that of the Mahatma Gandhi. So can you please speak on that how exactly the distortions created by Mahatma Gandhi led and accentuated all these distortions, and which later on led to such a grand level of discrimination?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame any one person. I don't think it's fair. In fact, I have a quote from Mahatma Gandhi which says that there should be no distinction of minority and majority. Here, there is a quote from him also. So I wouldn't blame one single person. What I would say is there's a set of circumstances, because the Congress was very keen to avoid partition, there was a sort of bending over to say, no, we are brothers and you'll be fine. So there was a bending over, and that even after partition, that kind of appeasement mind carried through. And it carried through with successive Congress governments. And the tragedy is that even people who campaigned against it, who called it pseudo-secularism, who called it appeasement, have continued or even enhanced those policies.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Sir, my question is that you said the signing of the Hindu Charter, that petition will be very fruitful, like in the future. My question is that do you think the present leadership rather, are they capable of overhauling the constitution? Like they amended Article 15 and 16 recently. So do you think that that's like the first step or something of something big?
See, that's a very speculative question. We don't know what they would do. At least personal level, I haven't seen any positive signs from them as far as Hindu civilization issues are concerned. I have been continuously critical of the new government since it's the present second term for continuously ignoring the Hindu issues and doling out schemes. And also, as I mentioned, we are living in we are now paying a jizya too, and we are moving towards the Islamic rule 2.0. So I don't know. That's a speculative question whether they do it or not. Whether if they do it, it's good. But abhi tak to kuch there has been no indications of such.
And the flip side of that is, why will a government do it? We need to create the pressure, which is they need to understand that there is a vote bank. They need to understand that right now Hindus themselves are completely ignorant. You go talk about this issue in your home and you say Hindu temples are controlled by the government. Okay, theek hi to kar raha hai, nahi to gadbad hogi. Hai na? So we have to start by educating people. We have to start, why is it that only Hindus do gadbad, church doesn't do gadbad, masjid doesn't do gadbad, only Hindus are incapable of running their places, right? So we have to start. This won't happen till we create massive awareness among Hindus that this discrimination is unfair, and then we create political pressure. Tomorrow 1 lakh people come on Janpath and say, this is a problem, then the government is going to start to listen. But we haven't created that force. So we really need to start, look at ourselves and start at home. Yeah?
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.